Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart. Today, we're going to cover a topic which we've covered several times before. It is worthy of us covering again. This time, I'm going to do my best to make it even simpler to help you understand how to navigate cholesterol levels, and maybe if you're on medications, all the above. With that being said, though, this by no means, this is my little disclaimer, by no means is this supposed to be to replace any medical advice you currently have, tell you to get on or off medications. This is solely for you to use to elevate your understanding of how to continue to get your body healthier, especially today when it comes to understanding cholesterols overall and their function in the human body and what things we can do to make them better as we go here. With that being said, thank you once again for showing up to the Health Made Simple Show. Appreciate that. And thank you for continuously doing your thing, sharing it out and spreading the love here. Some way, one way or another, we're having more impact, which is great. So thank you for everyone that continues to give us reviews, whether it's on Spotify or Apple or on YouTube. Thank you. They do matter. So a 5-star review, thank you if you're doing that. If you haven't yet, maybe you could do that for us. That would be absolutely awesome. And then I'm going to continue to do my job, the best that I can, provide you quicker and easier ways for you to just continue to be on your health journey and to just kind of make it simple and easy. Remember this, our bodies are designed to be healthy. Every single cell, tissue, and organ in your body is trying to help you survive, is trying to let you be strong, healthy, vibrant through the course of your life. And sometimes we get off track a little bit. The goal is just to allow our bodies to do that. And every one of these podcasts is designed to just make it simple so you don't have to necessarily worry about your health. You just stay on a good path, a good strategy, and get on with just loving life. All right, with that being said, let's dive in here. So here's what we're going to cover today. Options for cholesterols, options for high cholesterols. What are the best tests to take? And you might go out and get a little pen and paper here. I'm gonna jot those down so you can provide those to your provider if need be. And then also, what herbs can you take? What different supplements are the best? I'm going to keep it really, really simple today. I'm just narrowing it down to 3. And then also, what's the best diet when it comes to cholesterols? And often this is kind of shocking when I share this one. All right, let's dive in. Why am I doing this today? There's really 2 specific reasons. Well, there's really one. I think there's a huge misperception about cholesterols, even as we continue to gain more and more traction of saying, hey, listen, let's pump the brakes a little bit and not just crucify cholesterol for being the bad guy, because it's not. Technically, cholesterol, all your sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, are the building blocks are cholesterols. So if you don't have cholesterol and you start to lower them, inevitably, you're going to start to lower it. And we see that clinically, and I'll talk to that in just a moment. The second part is this, and this is the part where I think the awareness, we can't talk enough about it. There's an ongoing epidemic of speed in terms of neurodegenerative diseases. Specifically, I'm talking about things like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, dementia, Lewy body, all of those. What we do know is this, that there is a correlation between the use of statins, a correlation. I didn't say it's direct causation, but we do know that there's a correlation of the use of statins in an increased amount of people getting things like Alzheimer's. And folks, if you've ever had a family member, if you've ever had anybody that you know, unfortunately been diagnosed with one of those diseases, and they are chronic diseases, they take 10, 20 plus years to show up into their detrimental forms. So there's not too much we can do once they're there. If you've ever experienced someone in your life, you've ever had to take care of a family member with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, folks, it's brutal. It is absolutely brutal. So I literally, behind my motivation of a podcast like this, is to hope you avoid those scenarios, because I think a lot of these things that we're dealing with, sometimes I think we're causing them, quite frankly. And I'm going to share 2 things with your diet and just understanding about cholesterols, that they're not bad guys, that our body needs them, absolutely needs them to thrive, even the ones they call the bad guys. And I'll speak to those in just a moment. For those reasons, your hormones, man, imagine if you're on a medication that lowers cholesterol in your body, you're inevitably going to see a lowering of the building blocks that you use to make testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. Does it mean that it's automatically good? You start taking the medication, it just drops your testosterone? No. But the providers like myself, we see a tendency. If you have enough databases, you've been doing enough labs, you've seen thousands of patients, and you start to see the correlation. The ones that are on statins, we see that their sex hormones start to just continue to drop over time. Very, very common. Does any one of us want to have lower testosterone? No. Men and women, no, we do not. We're not as nice. We're not as motivated. We don't have as much muscles on our body. There's so many reasons we don't want to interfere with that. Heck, age, time, and the rest of the environment's already beating that up as it is. So the best that we can, we want to take some good, healthy strategies. And frankly, they're not that difficult. So, and again, not to be construed at any time. Anything I say here today is not to be construed as this is a message for you to get off your medications. That's between you and your provider. And listen, I would also say this. I'd put a little push to this. First thing I'm going to go in here to the different tests to look at. If your provider is still saying, well, your cholesterol is getting a little bit high here, maybe it's good just preventative action for you to go on a little bit of a cholesterol medication. I'm going to encourage you not to come on or off medication. I'm going to encourage you to give some pushback because that's an old school way of thinking it. So let's go through the tests because I'll break these down and help you understand which ones, if your doctor is up to date, they're running these tests, regardless of whether your insurance pays for them or not. This is your life on the line, folks. It really is. We do not want to mess with this stuff. We want to make sure that we have good, accurate information and knowing that we're heading in the right direction. So here are a couple different tests. Of course, you want to get your lipids done. That's just a basic cholesterol panel. That's going to include your LDLs, which are absolutely crucified as the bad guys. And I'll tell you this right up front. LDLs are healing agents. They get blamed for all the bad things that are going on, but they are healing agents. They are going to help you heal when you have damage, especially to the arterial wall, the endothelial lining. So why do we consider them bad guys? Because usually when you have damage, you see a lot more of these LDLs showing up, and eventually they can lead to plaquing, but it is not their fault. We are crucifying the wrong group here, and we just want to make sure we're paying attention to that. So you want your LDLs, your HDL, your triglycerides, and your total cholesterol. But we want to know a couple things about those. I'm going to do my best to keep this simple. You want to look at the ratio between HDLs and triglycerides. Ideally, for guys, you want it over, roughly 45, 50 or above. Women, maybe a little bit higher, 50 plus, maybe 55, 60 and above. We want the ratio of your HDLs to your triglycerides to be as close to 1-to-1 as can be, if not 1 to 1.5. So, for example, if you had your triglycerides at 60, let me back that up. If you had your HDLs at 60, maybe your triglycerides were at 60, or maybe they were at 80 or 85. And that would be that 1 to 1.5 ratio, something in that direction. So that's what we're looking for, HDL to triglyceride ratio. If that's all the information you have and you're able to look at those two components, you got a lot of information to help you understand where you are. Notice I didn't mention a darn thing about your total cholesterol, because it's the ratio that matters. Now, if you have your total cholesterol, one of the markers, the way that I'm going to tell you to look at this is the ratio between your LDLs and your total cholesterol. Ideally, you want your total cholesterol to be about 100 points above your LDLs. So if your LDLs are 120, maybe your total cholesterol will be about 220. So if that ratio is happening, what it tells you is that your body is responding appropriately, making your cholesterol, enhancing your lipid profile. So if you look at those two ratios, that's what we want to know from there. But then I'm going to encourage you to have a couple other markers. So far, we have a lipid panel, which is LDLs, HDLs, triglycerides, total cholesterol. And now we want to ask for some specifics that most of the time, providers are not providing unless you ask. The cool thing is, many of the providers listening to this podcast today, you're already asking for it. You are ahead of the curve, and that's where we want to be. We want to lead the way here, not just follow suit. So a couple other simple ones. Ask for what's called small LDLs. These are when we start talking about particle sizes. The particle sizes can be indicative of things that create more of a cardiovascular risk. If you have a whole bunch of small particles above, say 600, say somewhere in that range of 5 to 600, we'd like to see them under. If they're starting to get above, it increases your potential risk for cardiovascular disease. So that's one marker. So small LDLs. Then we also want to look at something called your insulin resistance score. Folks, I think this is one of the most important ones when it comes to the 4 horsemen of disease, which is cardiovascular risk, type 2 diabetes, metabolic disorders, cancers, and neurodegenerative diseases. Your insulin resistance is going to tell us if there is a root cause behind your cholesterol going up or down. So we want to see that insulin resistance. It tells us so much information, because if you're even inching toward the direction of starting to develop insulin resistance. Your primary focus and concern becomes that insulin resistance, not just driving down cholesterols. All right, so we have total cholesterol, we have LDLs, HDL, triglycerides, small particles, insulin resistance, and then the last but not least, might be the most important, is something called your ApoB. The ApoB is probably the most indicative overall in determining cardiovascular disease. Now, what do we do with these if we have them high? And they give you markers. Basically, I believe it's a below 90 is what you're looking for. In the event you have any of these highs, first thing you go to, folks, is your diet and lifestyle, because when we change those, we can change so much. They're not necessary. These things take time to go up and they can take some time to go down. But nonetheless, we know that things like carbohydrates and sugar, processed foods, drive up LDLs. We know that that's damaging the endothelial lining. The cause is not eating too many eggs and red meat. The challenge here is this. For so long, we've been told cholesterol is bad. And the very first thing, some of you are listening to this and you're going to do kind of like a little head slap and be like, it's exactly what happened to me. You see the cholesterol levels climbing up a little bit, 207, maybe 215, relatively what we consider basically low as can be. And your doc says maybe you should go on a statin medication, just preventative to keep it down low, and back off the eggs, back off the butter, back off the red meat, because they all have cholesterol in it. It's antiquated advice. That's not great health. That's not great health advice when it comes to overall function of your body and how your body's going to process your lipids. The cholesterols that you eat do not play that big of a role when it comes to raising your overall panel. What does play a role, here's the drum roll, boom, 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 is carbohydrates and sugar. So when I say carbohydrates, even though broccoli, cauliflower, and all those guys are carbs, I'm talking about the processed simple carbs, the breads, the muffins, the pastas, the snacks, the crackers, the donuts, all of that stuff, folks, gotta go. The challenge here is this: go on a medication. You go on a statin medication. What's the likelihood you're going to change all that stuff? Probably zip, zero, none. Why do I say that? Because I've been practicing for the last 30 years, and this is what we see. We see that people, instead of taking the hard route, and listen, if you've listened to my podcast before, here's the tough advice. Here's the tough truth about health. It is not easy being healthy. In fact, being healthy is a bit inconvenient. It's uncomfortable, and it's always going to be unfamiliar, because as we age, we're going to have to do things that we haven't done in the past. Now, most of you listening to this, you understand this, and you understand this is like a punch in the chest. But I'm going to tell you, this year, good year for you. Hopefully next year is going to be harder. You're going to have to do things better than you did this year. You're going to have to be better with your diet, better with your exercise, better with your sleep, better with your mindset. Because as we age, we're going to have to do more, not less. Now, some of you are listening to this and be like, yeah, I'm done with this podcast, because this guy's going to tell me that the majority of my health lies upon my own responsibility, and I can take charge of my health. Yep, that's what I'm going to say. And I'm joking that hopefully if you're listening to this for the first time, you're here for a reason. You're here for someone to give me maybe a little bit of truth in that. It's not easy being healthy, folks. It's really not. But when it comes to cholesterol, if you're going on a medication, myself and all the practitioners listening out there will agree with this. When you use the easy thing just to drive it down, even if it isn't supposed to be the right thing to do to drive these cholesterols down, if you do that and you drive these numbers down, do I think that your lifestyle is changing? No. I have 30 years of evidence saying when I see people take the easy route, the soft way out, taking a medication to drive things down instead of taking that firsthand responsibility, do I see them change lifestyle? No. And I'm not knocking, because listen, if the goal was just to lower your LDLs, it wasn't become a healthy, strong human being, then why would you change your lifestyle? And that's where we run into problems. So with that being said, we have those tests. We talking about HDL, triglycerides, LDLs, total cholesterol, fine, let's get it. Small LDLs, let's know the particle size. Let's see if there's any signs of insulin resistance starting to take place. And if it is, that means that is our number one target. And then also your ApoB. Let's talk diet for just a moment here, and then I'll give you some supplements. And the beauty is this, listen, there's so much evidence that there are so many ways that you can effectively, naturally affect your cholesterol levels. You can manipulate them up and down. How do I know? I do it all the time. So with that being said, let's talk diet for a second. First and foremost, whole foods, folks. Foods with one ingredient. There's no diet that's a good, healthy nutritional plan, diet, anything you want to talk about. Anyone that gives you a plan that doesn't include the foundation and the entire thing wrapped around whole foods, meaning foods with one ingredient, pass, balk, pass, go, leave them alone because they're leading you down an ugly path. I don't care if you're doing a vegetarian or a carnivore diet. All of those diets must consist of ingredients that have whole foods, one ingredient foods. That is always the starting point. Do I believe we need either one of those extremes? There's time and a place for both of those. I think therapeutically, they could both be wonderful. I think you're going to land somewhere in between but here's what I'm going to tell you. This is where it goes a little bit against probably traditional thought when it comes to cholesterol. I'm going to tell you this. The first thing that should come to your mind what is my next meal going to be? What am I going to eat today? The very first thing that you think of is what is my animal protein going to be? What building blocks, what amino acids, what fatty acids am I going to put into my body? And let that be the centerpiece of your diet. So when you look down at your plate, instead of this huge monstrous salad and a little bit of chicken on it, how about several chicken breasts to where you're almost getting completely full on your animal proteins first, and then some side stuff. You want a little broccoli, perfect. You want a bowl of blueberries, awesome. But predominantly your animal proteins. So we have plenty of essential amino acids and essential fatty acids. Get full in those first because all proteins do come with fat, and that'll help you be satiated. So your diet should be a whole food, one ingredient foods should be the entire diet. So Doc, what about pizza? You telling me I'm never going to have pizza again? I don't know if you'll have pizza again, but here's what I know. That when you put pizza into your body, I'm talking about, like going out for pizza. I know it's yummy, it's fun and all that. Yet it is 100% pro-inflammatory. And I can go in 20 minutes on just pizza between the processed cheese, the glyphosate in the wheat and all that stuff and the effect on leaky gut and all of that stuff. Here's the deal. Do I say you're never going to have it again? As your emphasis, as your desire to become healthy elevates up to first place instead of being third, fourth, and fifth place. But no, Doc, their priorities are health. That's not true. Oftentimes, the only time we really put our priority into first place is when it's all been at risk, when you are at your bottom, when you've hit a brick wall. I hate the fact that is so true, but it is. And I think for every one of us out there that are practitioners, that are literally passionate about what we're doing, it's because we've hit the wall a couple times probably, where we've had some low points and fought out of those spots. And I've shared a lot of my health history here in the podcast, and that's predominantly it. Now, because I get to observe the pain, the anguish that individuals go through by not putting their health first, and the pain and anguish that they put their families and loved ones through because they haven't made good choices, those are all real things. So I'm going to encourage you to keep letting health become your first priority. When that happens, you don't give a shit about the pizza. That's what happens. It's not that you don't love it anymore, and it's not that you're missing out or anything. You just don't care about it because your priority is being the best version of yourself. So those are bridges. And if I'm saying that right now and you're like, there's no way I'm not going to have pizza, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just beating up pizza for a moment here, but there's stair steps. You might say, man, I just don't eat donuts anymore. Next thing you know, I'm not going to have French fries because, man, the French fries with all those seed oils, all that stuff, there's stair steps. It doesn't have to be a clean swipe overnight. The quicker you get there, though, the better. First, the quicker you put you in the driver's seat as priority, awesome. All right. That being said, so diet, whole foods, animal proteins become your primary focus, and you're going to eliminate all processed carbohydrates. That, my folks, is what causes damage to the endothelial lining. That is what drives up bad cholesterols. That is what's going to drive up the small particles. That's what's going to drive up the triglycerides. That is what's going to drive up the ApoB. And those are the ones that are actually, when we're looking at your panel, those are the ones that are increasing your cardiovascular risk in terms of are you setting yourself up for heart disease? All right, with that being said, let's move forward here to the different supplementations. Here's the good news. It's simpler than we think. There's some magical stuff out there. If you are literally looking to help your body become better at lipid metabolism, here's how you're going to go. This first one is going to surprise you because it's overlooked and it's very, very important. First one I'm going to recommend for you is a product we use called Zypan. Specifically, it's a digestive enzyme. Specifically, the Zypan has two main ingredients. It's hydrochloric acid, which is going to help you break down your food better. Yes, it supports your immune system, helps kills off the bacteria, balances the pH, kills off some viruses, kills parasites, quite frankly. It is the protective element of your intestinal system. Yet many of us have a limitation or a limited amount of hydrochloric acid in our stomach, so we can't break our good foods down. Things like proteins. It's hard for us to break our foods down, so therefore we start to become deficient in key things like iron and zinc. And guys, zinc is so important for us. It's a primary, nutrient for our prostate gland. So if you can't break it down, if you're on an antacid, hopefully you're not, that's a different podcast, but if you can't break your food down, then you have a hard time metabolizing it. When that happens, we have a tendency to say things like, man, when I eat red meat, it just doesn't feel good for me. So you start to just tend and lean into things like carbohydrate consumption. And slowly but surely, you find yourself thinking, well, I'm not going to eat meat anymore. It doesn't make me feel good. That is a red flag, folks. We've got to be careful of that, especially my clinicians out there. If your patients say, I don't eat red meat anymore, and they think it's a good thing, but the real reason is because it doesn't make them feel good. Red flag, typically it means they don't have enough hydrochloric acid. So anyways, Zypan is a digestive enzyme. You take it right before you eat, couple tablets, 2 to 3 before you eat. If you forget, then you take it during. If you forget, then take it after. Help break down your foods. That's what I'm telling you to do. The second thing that you're going to do is you're going to add a good, healthy fish oil. And again, we haven't even talked about lipid metabolism here. Here's why. These fish oils, most fish oils at the root of it, these essential fatty acids. These are considered resolvents in your body, and they help resolve the inflammatory process that's going on. If we can lower the inflammation, you won't need as many healing agents, LDLs, as if you didn't have them. We test all the time. There's this very simple at-home omega-3 test. I can put that in the show notes for you. You can test. And almost everybody is massively deficient in their omega-3s. Even when you say, well, doc, I eat salmon a couple times a week. Remember, these omega-3s are competing against your omega-6, all your carbohydrates and everything else. So inevitably, for overall metabolic function, there's 3 things I put people on. 1 is a digestive enzyme. 2 is some type of an essential fatty acid. My 2 go-tos is cod liver oil to me is always just a great choice for all of us. Got a little vitamin A in it, little vitamin D, so it's also supporting your immune system. Got some DHA and EPA. If I'm testing and I find that the levels of omega-3 are significantly low, and you have low levels of DHA, that's the one that protects the brain. And I will see these across the board in my folks that are on statins. If you're low in there, then I shift and I use a different product called Olprima. EPA, DHA is just higher levels of those 2 things, DHA and EPA. And then last but not least, the magical one, I think, in all of this, when it comes to lipid metabolism, is an herb. It's a natural herb. It's been around forever. It's called berberine. There are different forms of it out there, folks. I use one called Berberine Active. I trust it. I know where it's coming from. I know how they use the whole plant versus components of it. And that's sometimes you see some bad information saying, oh, berberine can do this or berberine can do that. It's usually because they're not using the whole plant. With that being said, here's why I love berberine so much. And I've used this countless of times to help people, especially with metabolic syndrome. What is metabolic syndrome? In a nutshell, it is when you have high lipids, you have a fatty metabolism issue, and you're also having a blood glucose issue. Folks, that's most people out there. They're having higher cholesterol and high blood sugar. That's the heart disease and type 2 diabetes. So my favorite herb out there for that is berberine. It has so many beneficial qualities to it. It helps upregulate something called the AMPK, and that is what helps lipid metabolism and blood sugar regulation. So it helps you become better at metabolizing your fats, and it helps your pancreas regulate your blood sugar. So for that reason, by itself, an awesome, very safe, very gentle herb that we use on a regular basis. And with those simple 3 things right there, we are able to watch people better regulate, better manage their lipid metabolisms, their cholesterol panels, if you want to call them. And again, not to be construed anything I've said here today as medical advice or anything to tell you come on, your medications are off, rather to elevate your consciousness and your thinking when it comes to cholesterols. If anyone from my generation, you have been told since day one, you've always thought of cholesterols as being bad. And I'm telling you today, they're not. Your body produces them naturally. And big part of the reason they're going to do it, we have 70% of the myelin in your brain is made up of cholesterols. And if we're on medications lowering that, we got to assume that we're going to create some problems with our brains. And I see it all the time. I've seen some situations where people have come off their medications. Again, I'm not telling you to do it. I've seen them come off their medications and all of a sudden see things like brain fog go away, memory increase, so many subtle little things that they thought were just part of the aging process get corrected. All right, so that being said, so real quickly here, what are the different supplements? And I'll put these in the show notes. A digestive enzyme, and you're not going to hear that in traditional conversations about cholesterols, but being able to break your food down properly. And so there's hydrochloric acid in there, a little bit of pepsin. That pepsin gets to be stored in the upper part of the small intestine. That is where we need really, really good protein metabolism so we can start to break our foods down better and get those amino acids back into the body so we can utilize them as building blocks. So Zypan, a couple before you eat, something called Prima, DHA, EPA, that is a type of fish oil, or just go with old school cod liver oil. And then, of course, berberine active is my absolute favorite when it comes to lipid metabolism and your ability to help regulate blood sugars. All right, folks, hopefully this has been a good, informative podcast for you when it comes to cholesterol management. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading love. I look forward to seeing you on the next Health Made Simple podcast. God be awesome.